This is my response to the YouTube channel Road to F.I.R.E. Over there, she is documenting her journey to financial independence and sharing a lot of things that she learns along the way. And I think that it is great. I love what she's doing with the channel, and it's an amazing educational channel. But very specifically, I am responding to her plan to retire in 8 years. Overall, I think that it's a pretty solid plan, but I think that maybe their ROI, it might be a little bit too optimistic. Now, I'm all about being very optimistic, but I wouldn't have my heart set on a very specific date. I wouldn't have my heart set on a very specific ROI. I would focus on the journey rather than the actual destination. But still, I think that overall, her plan is pretty good. But let's break it down a little bit more. The first thing that I want to briefly talk about is at the 1 minute and 20 second mark, she says, the only way that you can retire early is one key factor, and that is compound interest. Now, while I really love compound interest, and I think that compound interest is amazing, it can definitely get you to retirement. It can get you to early retirement as well. But in this case, if you're trying to achieve financial independence in 8 years, or in a smaller amount of time frame, then compound interest isn't actually going to make up the bulk of getting your investments to that level that you need it to be. Your savings rate is what is going to get you to that level. So the higher amount of percentage of your income that you are putting towards investments, the faster that you can achieve financial independence. In a short time frame, such as 8 years, or even 10 years, or even 15 years, the majority of your net worth is actually going to come from you actually putting money away. You actually putting money into your investments. It's not going to come from compound interest, unfortunately. Compound interest needs a lot longer of a time in order to work its magic. It is a really big factor if you're considering, regular retirement where you're investing and you have maybe 30, 40, 50 years until you plan to start withdrawing from those investments. But if you plan on withdrawing from your investments in 8 years, such as what's in this video, then compound interest is going to make up a small amount of your total net worth. It's going to contribute a very small amount. Now, over time, if you have above average market returns and you have a very low withdrawal rate, maybe you have some other income that you can reduce your withdrawal rate, then compound interest can work and make your net worth grow exponentially, even while you're already financially independent. So I would have to disagree with the statement that compound interest is the most important factor for achieving financial independence or early retirement. It's going to be a bigger factor for regular retirement, but your savings rate is going to be the biggest factor for achieving early financial independence. Now, starting at the minute of 5 minutes and 34 seconds, she says another thing that I just wanted to touch up on here, and that is, she said, because I am relatively conservative, we opted to use the 30-year rate of return. But on the chart she shows there, the 30-year rate of return is 10.7%, and that is from 1991 to 2020. And I think this is way too optimistic if you're trying to estimate how much your portfolio is going to return. Maybe the US stock market will return 10%, in the next couple of years. Maybe the average will be over the next 30 years. I have no idea. But just by using that particular data, that most recent 30-year data, I don't think that it's going to be an accurate representation of the long-term, returns of the US stock market, especially of the S&P 500, if that's what that is referring to. I think that it's better to actually use a little bit lower at around 8%. And that's going to be before inflation. I think that 8% is a little bit more accurate. And here's why. To get a little bit more accurate returns of the total stock market, the US stock market, I think it's better to look at long-term rolling returns. So different years and how those rolling long-term returns. So on the website that I really like to read, the blog, 4pillarfreedom.com, they show the 40-year S&P 500 inflation-adjusted annualized returns. And this, I like to use the longest term possible. So on there, they have the 40-year returns. The best 40-year returns are 8.8% annual returns for the S&P 500. The worst 40-year returns were 4.2% annual returns. Remember, this is inflation adjusted. This already accounts for inflation. The median annual returns, which is probably what the most likely thing is, since 1928 has been 6.5%. And thankfully, the S&P 500 has never returned a negative return in any 40-year rolling period. So as you can see from that chart, I think that looking back a lot further, in that case, it looked all the way back to 1928, and it looked at longer time periods, 40-year time periods. They found the inflation-adjusted returns, the median returns, to be about 6.5%. If you estimate the inflation to be about 2% or 2.5%, then the S&P 500 long-term 40-year rolling returns could be around 8 or 8.5%. But if you're accounting for inflation, the median for that time period was only 6.5%. So I think that the chart that she's using, the 10% one, is a little too optimistic for what to expect over the long term if you're investing in the market. And in addition to that, in this particular video, she didn't exactly say what her portfolio was. So I would assume that it's investing 100% in stocks, like 100% in the US stock market. And that definitely is not conservative, even though she said that even though I'm a bit conservative, I'm using this amount of return. But if you're investing 100% in stocks, then your portfolio is definitely not conservative. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying I think that the 10% might be a little too optimistic if you're using that for your estimated future returns. Although I really do hope it does return 10% because I'm invested in the same thing. And by the way, if you're liking this video so far, please make sure you like it. It really does help me out, and I really do appreciate that. It'll help spread this video to everyone who needs to hear it, especially other people who are watching Road to Fire videos. But after that, some really great stuff on there. Really good video overall. But I did want to stop again at 11 minutes and 39 seconds. So in this part, she says, I will always find a way to take our big goals and break it down into smaller goals. And I really wanted to point this out because I agree 100% with this. I think it is very important for everyone trying to achieve financial independence to not look at the overall goal, not look at that big number. You know, if you need to make $1 million in order to become financially independent, don't look at the goal as $1 million. You know, that it can be very frightening looking at that. That's such a big number, right? Especially if you're starting from zero, especially maybe even if you're starting from negative. Don't look at that overall number. Break that down into smaller goals that you can achieve a lot faster. Make it like milestones. It's really important to do that. So I'm really glad that she does that, and I'm really glad that she let everyone else know that that is a really great way to achieve your goals. Because if you only look at the overall result and you don't achieve that overall result, especially within a specific amount of time, you're going to think that you failed. When in reality, you know, let's say you got to $800,000 instead of $1 million on your planned date. You still have $800,000. That's awesome. You didn't fail. So it's not a win or lose situation. Enjoy the path to financial independence and do that by, yes, setting goals, but breaking them down into smaller goals that you can easily achieve. Overall, I wish Road to Fire the best. I know that she will achieve her goals. And if you haven't watched Road to Fire, if you're unaware of the channel, please make sure that you check out her channel and you check out this particular video that I'm referencing so it all makes sense, my little response here. My last bit of advice that I want to leave for Road for Fire is to make sure that you focus on the journey and not necessarily the destination. And speaking of the journey to financial independence, if you haven't already, make sure that you watch another video that I created that's the full guide to getting started on the path to financial independence. Make sure you watch that video if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.